Audio recording for this meeting has begun.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Captain Angela Matungwa. I am the Director of the Division of Commission Personnel Support within the Office of Human Resources at the Indian Health Service headquarters. In my role as DCPS Director, I'm also the IHS Commission Corps liaison to the Office of the Surgeon General and Commission Corps headquarters. I really want to thank you all for being on today's call. This is something we've wanted to do for some time and are giving it the priority that it needs. I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to do this and to have this regular interaction with officers in the Indian Health Service. We recognize the importance of your time, that everyone is busy, everyone is pulled in many different directions, but we also wanted to ensure that we had this other level of, an additional level of communication and to provide you all with another outlet in which you can ask us questions, express concerns and comments in sort of a safe environment amongst IHS family. And so there's a lot of transition going on. There are a lot of challenges, changes in processes, changes in systems, changes in requirements affecting your careers and really the quality of work life. And so we wanted to ensure within DCPS as well as IHS senior leadership that we are available in this forum for additional communication with you all. And so look forward to speaking. And before I continue on, I do want to open the floor to Admiral Brandon Taylor, Chief of Staff to the IHS Director, for any opening remarks that he may have. Admiral Taylor.
Thank you, Captain Matungwa, and thank you, everyone, for joining this very important call. And certainly, you've seen and heard a lot of different information from Commission Corps headquarters and OASH and OSG over the last several weeks and even months. And I'm thrilled and grateful for Captain Matungwa and her team and their leadership and foresight to have these monthly all-hands calls with officers of the agency. Admiral Wiaki is certainly supportive and likely would have been here on this call today, but he is getting some much-deserved annual leave and is really disconnected from the world. So not sure when he comes back online if he'll know who the next president will be. But we're grateful that he's leading our agency and so supportive of our officers across the country. I'm pretty excited about some of the recent changes that are coming out of the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health and the Office of the Surgeon General. I think we're turning a corner in some of the messaging and the way things are messaged, and certainly grateful to Captain Matungwa and her entire team, who I know very well, for their leadership, their expertise, and look forward to today's call. And from Admiral Wiaki and Admiral Buchanan, we thank each of you for your dedication, your passion for the IHS mission. We thank your families for their support of you as you serve on the front lines taking care of patients, many of whom are hurting and suffering from the pandemic and have perhaps lost loved ones, and as we have within our own IHS family. So thank you for all that you do. I hope and pray that each of you can get some time away to decompress, to unplug, and refresh throughout this pandemic as it will continue for yet many, many more months. So with that, again, thank you, and I'll turn it back to Captain Matungwa.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your remarks. So for the purpose of today's webinar and all hands, we have a lot to go through, and so we're going to really just jump right in We will be muting the lines, and we do hope that there will be time at the end to take questions. And so if you do not have a microphone or are not able to ask your question via phone, please feel free to enter it into the chat box, and if time permits, we will take the question at the end. We will end right at the top of the hour, and so hopefully that will present us with enough time, and so we'll go through and hope to have time for questions. While we are receiving questions and concerns ahead of time, it's really to allow us to organize the presentation and to ensure that we are really hitting on the topics that are of interest to the vast majority of IHS officers. It is not intended to take the place of dialogue during this call and for officers to be able to ask your questions on the spot. And so this first webinar and presentation was, you all didn't have a ton of notice, and so we may not have as many people on the call for this live presentation as we will be able to in the future. And so just for your awareness, for future sessions, we are already working to establish dates for future months, and so in the near future, we'll be putting out something, a sort of save the date message with the next 2, 3, 4, 5, hopefully 6 months of webinars so that you all may plan in advance and really plan your schedule around it as much as possible to be able to attend. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started. So here's the agenda that I wanted to touch upon today. So talking a little bit about readiness, talk about deployment, a promotion update, really timely and important for right now, leave carryover, the 2020 annual CORE, hazardous duty pay, and then some miscellaneous topics. So one of the things we want to do is touch upon the questions that we received from you all via the IHS CORE inquiries mailbox. In touching on these agenda items, we will be covering many of the questions that we received. However, there are some individual questions on other topics that we will cover towards the end in the miscellaneous section as well. And so if through some oversight we don't cover a question, please let me know and I'll be happy to get you an answer to your question. Because this first session is maybe somewhat more abbreviated, we'll look at how much information we're covering, the number of questions we may have at the end of this, and look at our timing for subsequent webinar sessions, whether we need to push it to an hour and a half or whether the 1 hour does work. I will cover a promotion update. However, due to timing, I will not have the opportunity to cover the failure to promote policy piece during this session. Also, because of the less than optimal lead time in publicizing this, we do want a number of officers, more officers, as many officers as possible, to be able to plan to listen in live to that particular topic, because we do understand it is sort of a hot topic. It is something that is challenging to understand, and I really want to be able to have the time to work through it, to talk with you, to make sure that it's understandable, as well as to take questions. And so with the amount of information that we are covering today, given that it is our first webinar and we've had a couple of Commission Corps town halls before this, we have a lot of other topics to cover. And so I will cover the failure to promote and the topic of restricted grades and permanent promotion and what happens if I'm not promoted twice in succession, and all those questions in our next webinar. So please stay tuned for that. And again, we plan to give you those dates in the very near future. All right, so talking about readiness. So there have been many questions about, and this was covered in the town hall, but it was maybe not as clear as for all officers, sort of what the deadlines are. And so CCHQ, the Office of the Surgeon General, the ASH, recognizing that there's just a lot going on for everyone. It may not be with social distancing, with the workload. It may not be possible for officers to meet some of the basic requirements for basic readiness. And so they have, in recognition of that, extended the deadlines to complete some of these readiness components, including basic life support, the annual physical fitness test, or APFT, and the periodic health update, the PHU. And so the BLS and APFT are due by March 31st, 2021. Now that is, that of course can be subject to change and further delayed. However, officers should now keep that in mind as the due date for completing those requirements. As we approach those dates, I'm sure that CCHQ leadership will accept feedback if it looks like officers continue to have challenges in meeting those requirements due to constraints that are often imposed by others who would be required to help meet these requirements, such as BLS courses not being offered and things like that. Periodic health update, so lots of questions about that. Kind of confusing in terms of when is it due or not. So it is waived for 2020 for all officers now. So if you've not completed your periodic health update because the military treatment facility near you, like Walter Reed here in the Washington, D.C. area, is not completing these, the PHU for core officers and things like that, take heart, it's okay. The requirement has been waived for 2020 for all of us. And so the requirement will resume in 2021, and it will still coincide with the officer's birth month. And so I know that the guidance has said that it's sort of, you've seen the March 31st, 2021 date. That will apply for some officers, but for the majority of officers, it's still about it sort of centers around the birth month. So it is due within a 3-month window. So you can complete the PHU in the month before your birth month, in the actual month you were born, the anniversary of your birth date, or in the month after your birth month. So for example, if you were born in May and you have a May birth date, your PHU is due in April, May, or June. So April, the month before, May, the month of, and then June, the month after. And so by June 30th, 2021, you would have to have completed your PHU and uploaded that in eDocu. Now, where does that March 31st, 2021 come into play? That's sort of the earliest that it will be due for any officer in 2021, and that really applies to officers who have a January birth date. Their date then is March 31st. That's their due date, their final due date for upload of their PHU. So I hope that is clear. We did receive a number of questions on that. Friendly reminder, please ensure that you are continually ready, basic ready, and do yourselves and us a favor of contacting us, and us being your Division of Commission Personnel Support, or DCPS, or Liaison Office, all interchangeable. Please contact us before your readiness requirement expires. If you're having technical difficulties with the system, you have questions, you're not able to get appointments for things, whatever it is, we can really best help you if you contact us before it expires. Once it does make it a little bit more challenging to adjudicate the issue. And also, please keep in mind the readiness assistance form, which is found in the Officer Secure area in the Red Dog self-service portal. That is the official way to reach out to Red Dog, the Readiness and Deployment Branch, RDB, to inform them of a technical issue that you are having as well. But please feel free to always begin with our DCPS team with any Commission Core related question that you may have. We can often answer it for you. If we're not able to, we can reach out to CCHQ on your behalf. So deployment, lots of questions as well regarding deployment so there are many deployments ongoing this year related to COVID, hurricane response, community-based testing sites and quarantine stations, lots of different deployments that are ongoing, as well as our own internal IHS COVID-19 activities. And so regarding deployment credit, Commission Core Headquarters is considering credit for officers that have been sort of quote-unquote internally deployed for agency COVID-19 activities. They are, and that would include patient care activities, ICS or Incident Command Structure, Incident Command System activities, contact tracing, testing, all of those types of things. And so they are looking at credit for both deployment credit in terms of giving officers credit in the file, as well as for eligibility for service awards like the RSA Response Service Award or the CRISA, the CRSA, the Crisis Response Service Award. There are some set requirements for those in terms of how long an officer is deployed and things like that, that they will need to work out. But we are reporting a list of IHS officers who, to our knowledge, are at a list of officers that, to our knowledge, are involved in COVID-19 support activities on behalf of the agency. And so even if you did not deploy for a Commission Core mission, what you're doing in the Indian Health Service is so important. And IHS senior leadership, all of us, we really do want to make sure that our officers are getting credit for the activities that you are doing to support the IHS mission internally. And so every week we actually report, we send a report to RDB with a list of officers, their activities, the dates, and things like that. And we work through our area directors to collect that information. And so before RDB closes this process, at least for the end of the year or at some point before they say, that's it, final call, we will work to confirm the info that we have to ensure we've included all of the officers who should be included. And so what that process will look like, we have not quite outlined it yet, but we will do that because that's an important piece to ensure that every IHS officer, every Commission Core officer that is assigned to the IHS that you are and who is participating in this important work, that your participation is reflected and counted when credit may be given out and eligibility for the service awards. The Readiness and Deployment Branch is working to update deployment records for missions in 2020. And so there's nothing that is really required of officers for this activity, but based on the information that we are providing, based on Commission Core deployments, personnel orders and things, they're working to get the system updated to accurately reflect officer deployments, and they hope to do that by the end of the year. So in the interim, some of the questions that we got was, okay, can we put these agency-related COVID-19 activities on promotion documents? And they can be. They can be incorporated into your CV, into your officer statement, where appropriate. And so it really may depend on your category CV guidance, for instance, in terms of where you may put that. Perhaps you will put it under public health, leadership and training and experience, It may also go under the readiness and deployment section of the CV. And so really, if you have questions about that, I would recommend reaching out to look at your CV guidance or contacting your categories pack for additional guidance. But there should be opportunities to incorporate that in the promotion documents. Speaking of promotions, so just a brief promotion update. We got a number of questions related to the status of permanent promotion results and promotion eligibility. And so just wanted to touch on that briefly. Permanent promotion results are pending presidential approval. And so it's really required by law, and I think 42 USC, I think it is 211 is the section of the U.S. Code that covers permanent promotions for USPHS Commission Corps officers. And so they do require presidential approval. And so you may have noticed that our president is pretty busy lately. And so signing off on the permanent promotion results may not be at the top of his priority list. And so they continue to be pending signature and really cannot be effected without that. And so CCHQ did reach a point where they needed to put out eligibility for promotion year 2021. So normally we get promotion results back for temporary and permanent, and then they're able to remove officers from the list who were successful for promotion and then generate the eligibility list for the next promotion year. Well, without having those permanent promotion results, they really could not easily generate that eligibility list. And so they held off as long as they could. And then you saw that last week they did release eligibility into officers' dashboards of the officer secure area. What you will notice, if you were eligible for permanent promotion in promotion year 2020, which is the one that just passed, you will see that you remain eligible for permanent promotion. That does not mean you were unsuccessful. We just don't know. And because those results are not finalized and signed off on, you have to be reflected as eligible in promotion year 2021. Does that mean you should prepare your promotion file in EOPF as though you will be reviewed in 2021? The short answer is yes. Because we don't know who was successful or not, and you definitely don't want to be caught right up against the deadline finding out that you will be eligible again in 2021 and need to prepare, we do recommend, and CCHQ recommends, that officers who were eligible for permanent promotion, that you do go ahead and just prepare and plan to submit documents for promotion year 2021. You don't have to submit them now. You still have time before the deadlines, but just mentally prepare and start to think about updating your documents in order to do that. We recognize it's not ideal and sort of inconvenient, and just the not knowing and the waiting and all those things, but that is where we find ourselves, and CCHQ really exhausted their options in terms of trying to get the list moved forward. And so here we find ourselves. The 2021 or promotion year 2021 benchmarks are available under the promotions menu of CCMIS. If you're up for promotion, you absolutely want to familiarize yourself with all of the links under that menu, especially if this is your first time being eligible for promotion. There's an overview. You definitely want to look at the benchmarks, and hopefully you are already familiar with them. But your documents, your promotion documents, absolutely harken back to the benchmarks. How you measure up, your accomplishments measure up to the benchmarks. That is what you want reflected in your documents. And so familiarize yourself with the deadlines. Give yourself plenty of time And your officer statement is also, the 2021 officer statement is also available now. Please make sure if you're up for promotion that you do your officer statement only on the 2021 form. It will not be accepted on any other year's version. The 2021 reviewing official statement should be completed as part of the 2020 annual COER. And so remember that it's changed so that it's not a separate form now, but is a part of the annual COER. And so when an officer initiates the form in the officer secure area, there is a button to check that says I'm up for promotion. The officer is up for promotion. That's going to automatically sort of require the reviewing official to complete the reviewing official statement. And so if up for promotion, or if you just want an ROS as part of your COER, you will check that box. So for the ROS, it should be done online for those who are completing the annual COER online. For those officers who transferred or had a supervisor transfer between July 1, 2020 and September 30th, 2020, you need to, and so that means you should have done a transfer COER on the PDF form because the online system was not available when you transferred or your supervisor transferred. If you did that, then you should do the PDF version of the ROS to accompany that PDF version of the transfer COER. Okay, but otherwise, for the vast majority of officers, the ROS will be completed as part of the annual COER. Speaking of the annual COER, the 2020 annual COER, it should be done online for most officers, as I mentioned. Officers who transferred or had a supervisor transfer between July 1, September 30th, you'll complete the transfer COER via the PDF form. So I want to mention this because it's super confusing and not really clear to many officers. The COER policy that came out, the updated COER policy, CCI 351.01, it's effective August 12, 2020. That applies to the 2021 COER year. So it actually says it in bullet number 2 right there on the front in applicability, that it applies to the 2021 rating period that begins October 1, 2020 through September 30th, 2021. Those changes that have been made do not actually apply to the current COER that we are completing online. So if you want to really see what is applicable for the 2020 COER we're doing right now, you really refer to the POM, the Personnel Operations Memorandum 821.73. And that doesn't necessarily tell you everything you need to know, but answers a lot of questions. And then for those that are not answered, please contact us. So the previous policy still applies for instance, transfer COERs. That's why you would still do it on the PDF form if you transferred between July 1 and September 30th. Going forward, if you were to transfer now that we're in the new rating period that began October 1, 2020 and will end September 30th, 2021, if you transfer now and going forward, you would use the online system to do even what is now called interim COER. So even under the current policy, there's no more transfer COER. All COERs that are not an annual COER are called an interim COER. That's different from before. We had transfer COERs. Different coming up in the new system under the new policy for this current rating, current rating period or upcoming rating period that we are entering now is also who would complete the COER as the rater if the officer transferred. So under the previous policy and for the 2020 COER, the rater is whomever was your supervisor on July 1 of 2020. Pretty cut and dry. That's who your rater is for the annual COER. For the upcoming CORE, this new rating period we're entering, and we'll do our CORE next October, your annual CORE is going to be determined by who was your rater the longest. So if you have 2 raters and one was your rater for 8 months and one was your rater for 4 months, then it's going to be the one who was your rater for 8 months. But that is the upcoming rating period and not now. And so that was confusing to many officers, and for good reason, but just wanted to point that out. Really, that updated CORE policy is for the upcoming rating period. The one we're doing now in the system, please use the POM, and of course reach out to us if you have any questions. There have been a number of questions because the system has some quirks, as we're calling them, and some wrinkles that CCHQ is working out, and so they are aware. We have, as well as other agency liaisons, have brought some of the system issues to the attention of CCHQ, and they are working diligently on correcting those. And so in the interim, raters and reviewing officials should definitely refer to the CORE user guide on CCMIS, lots of screenshots and helpful hints, as well as the CORE overview that we've created within DCPS to assist IHS stakeholders. And so we do have a presentation that, if we have not already in your respective region or area, we will make available that should really help your rater and reviewing official with the completion of the CORE. And officers, most of you should have already completed your CORE. If you haven't, that's okay. There is time to do that, and there are some helpful hints and tips and suggestions to help you as well. So I just want to go briefly. As I mentioned, we have the presentation that we are sending out, but just briefly, here are some of the tips and suggestions. And so you definitely, and everyone who is doing the CORE, you will want to save your text in an external word processor like Microsoft Word or Notepad, and then copy and paste it into the CORE system. Because what we've found out is that the system will time out after 20 minutes of activity or inactivity. So even if you're actively working in the system, or your rater or reviewing official is actively in the system, it will time out after 20 minutes and they won't know. And some have worked an hour, 2 hours on a CORE, and then got an error message at the end because the system timed out, but there was no warning. And when the system times out, it does not save the information. And so that has, unfortunately, some raters and reviewing officials have found that out the very hard way, and were understandably frustrated. And so we are getting the word out there is that we definitely want everyone to prepare their document, their comments, their scores, their comments, what they want to say, and save it so that they can cut and paste and move quickly through the system. But also, should the system time out for whatever reason, they will have that information saved and can go back and start over. Of course, we want raters and reviewing officials to discuss the rating and comments before the rater completes the CORE. Make sure they're on the same page, and before that happens. Now, the system is built such that the reviewing official can send it back to the rater as needed, and the liaison can also send it back to either officer, rater, or reviewing official as needed to make changes as well. So that's a very nice feature. And as I mentioned, closing a CORE before submitting it will delete all of the work that's entered, and so it will not save incomplete work. For officer, in case you have not completed your section, if your rater's email address will not populate, then you should ensure the supervisor's name and email address are correct in Red Dog self-service portal. Remove the to date, the end date for your current supervisor if there is one there. There should not be an end date if that's your current supervisor because it is ongoing. And then ensure both the from date and the to date are populated for the CORE rating period. That will rectify the vast majority of the problems. Raters should make sure they enter the reviewing official's name and email address and not their own name and email address for the reviewing official. And then absolutely, once your COER is complete, officers, please go into your EOPF, check to make sure all the pages of the COER are there, it's legible, there aren't any issues. And then you can submit a rebuttal to the COER to provide your side if regarding scores and or comments if you do not agree. Something to keep in mind, raters may initiate an interim COER to document performance for remedial or disciplinary action, and they don't need the consent of the officer. If your rater initiates an interim COER, you are required to do your part. Scores are optional if the rater supervised the officer less than 6 months of an annual COER, or for all interim COERs. And the rater should ideally be giving feedback to an officer on performance on an ongoing basis. If all else fails and you have problems, try using Google Chrome if it's available to you. That has rectified some issues as well. And then always contact your headquarters or regional DCPS team if you have issues. We're becoming very well versed in some of the issues, and so we can definitely help. Here are the COER dates, and I just want to emphasize these are soft deadlines, meaning that if your part was not done by October 28th to your rater, as long as your rater didn't direct you to do it by that date, in which case if they did, then you should have. But if they didn't, no harm, no foul that you're a little bit late. No harm, no foul if the rater is late getting it to the reviewing official or the reviewing official is late getting it to the agency liaison. As long as we all do our part to get it into your EOPF by promotion deadlines, if you're up for promotion, and by January 15, 2021, it's all good. So these are soft deadlines except for that final deadline. So to talk quickly about hazardous duty pay, and that is a topic of importance to many of our officers as well as to us and leadership. CCHQ continues to work on getting that authorized for payment for officers who are exposed to COVID-19 positive patients or potentially positive patients, or people, not necessarily in a clinical setting, but people. And so the current core policy only covers risks specifically in a laboratory environment. So, and it's in accordance with the U.S. code that you see there, 37 U.S.C. 301A9. And so it really excludes environments that many of our officers were in or are in when potentially exposed in a patient care setting on deployment. So CCHQ is working to obtain authorization to allow payment of hazardous duty pay that's in accordance with a different section of the U.S. Code, 37 U.S.C. 351A2. And so eligibility criteria are being reviewed, but it is expected to cover exposure to COVID-19 positive or potentially positive patients as part of assigned duties or on deployment, like to a community-based testing site, quarantine station, things like that, in addition to a research or laboratory environment. And so the potential hazardous duty pay would be capped at a maximum of $250 per month. So it could be $150 per month like it was for Ebola. Could be less, it could be more, but will be capped at $250 per month. But that's the status of hazardous duty pay. And just know that between DCPS, IHS senior leadership, our HR directors, everyone is really advocating for this and ensuring that it continues to move along so that our officers who have worked very hard on some of these activities and are potentially in harm's way receive this pay. It may not be a large sum of money, but it is something, and really is just an acknowledgement of the risk. Leave carryover. So briefly, we talked about the fact that the public law authorize the carryover of unused annual leave from FY 2020 through September 30th, 2023. And so there had been some messaging that went out that made it appear that leave could be carried over multiple years up to 120 days, because that's what it was for the DOD. That's not the provision here. So really, for PHS officers can carry over really what amounts to a maximum of 90 days total. And that excess leave that is carried over, that's the portion that can be carried over up through September 30th, 2023. So CCHQ is working on changes to ECOR to implement that leave carryover provision and allow officers with excess leave to actually determine whether they want to use the excess leave when they are requesting annual leave, or if they want to use leave that's accrued during the current fiscal year. So right now, we're in FY 2021, we're going to accrue 2.5 days per month. Once they update the system, you'll have the option, or at least their plan is, hopefully it goes as planned, you'll have the option of selecting from your excess leave from 2020 or the current fiscal year's accrued leave. And so you'll determine which works out better for you. But since after the leave accrued in each fiscal year will expire, so we're accruing 30 days of leave this fiscal year, we're not going to be able to carry over any excess leave from this fiscal year into 2022. So 30 days of leave, if you already had 60 days of leave going into it or more, you're going to have to use the 30 days from 2021 or lose it. The excess leave from 2020, you don't have to use that right away. You have until September 30th, 2023 to use that. So just keep that in mind when that provision, when that system is updated and you have the options. Of course, we'll talk more about it once we get to that point. In the interim, we need officers who still are pending, have leave in the system that's not been confirmed that they took prior to September 30th, 2020. We just need them to confirm that so that we or CCHQ can then confirm it on behalf of the supervisor. CCHQ needs all officers corps-wide to take care of their part of confirming leave, because none of us can do it for the officer has to do it, so that they can clean up the system and have a clean slate for moving forward with these technical changes that will allow the excess carryover to be included. Questions? You need us to change your LAO, please direct it to your regional or headquarters DCPS team. So let's get quickly into some of the other questions that we received that didn't fit into those categories, and then if time permits, we will take questions from you all that may remain. So, question here, and normally you'll see the answers here are pretty just spelled out. I think it just makes it easier for those who are not able to attend or want to refer back, but we put the question here as well as the answer. So first question or comment, it can be challenging to decipher which readiness requirements USIS medical students are exempt from, which they are required to keep up with while in medical school. Could you clarify how the changes in Commission Corps policies, processes, and systems, especially in regards to readiness standards, apply to USIS medical school students, if at all? So short answer is yes. And so we won't do it here, but we definitely recognize that our USIS officers have some unique needs and requirements. There are certain things like the annual cohort is not required while officers are in medical school in USIS. Not everyone may know that, but there are some unique requirements. And so, yes, we can definitely ensure that we outline the differences in the requirements and make those available to our officers that are in medical school in USIS, and as well as any that may apply for those that have graduated from medical school but are in residency. And so we do try to be in direct contact with our USIS officers about the core, let's say, or about being up for promotion and needing an ROS or whatever is needed. But we certainly can put things on paper in recognition that there are some unique challenges and there may be some questions. But please always remember that your DCPS regional or headquarters liaison, and normally for USIS folks, it is the headquarters DCPS team. We're always available to answer any questions that you may have, and definitely welcome feedback like that, hey, we have a different perspective, so definitely remind us that, if there are gaps in our services, things that you need from us that we may not recognize that we need to tell you or do for you, please just let us know, and we're happy to do that. Next question, I wanted to ask about the accession bonus for the 2013 to 2015 IHS pharmacy residents. The AB has not been authorized for these 3 classes, even though the residents before and after have received the bonus. Has there been any update on this issue? And then going into what they heard in 2018 might be included in HPSP revisions, but that hasn't taken shape yet. And so, it's because of the Affordable Care Act and all officers becoming regular core, there was a period where a few pharmacy resident classes were not paid the accession bonus. And so, yes, some before were, some after were paid as well. And so there's this gap. Definitely been an ongoing conversation. So honestly, I don't have the answer right now, but I will follow up with CCHQ and the chief pharmacist to see what the status is and if we can close the loop on this. My understanding was it was a challenge and would present a challenge to go back and pay for previous fiscal years, to pay out of previous fiscal years, as well as to determine who may pay. What if the officer has transferred to a different agency? Who's going to pay that, and how would that work? So there definitely were some challenges, and that may have precluded CCHQ from being able to implement resolution, but I need to follow up with them and get confirmation on that. And I will certainly do that and figure out the best way to communicate that to those that may be impacted. So thank you for the question. Next question, many IHS officers have been on one or more TDY assignment. In the awards policy, it indicates the agency has responsibility for crediting the officer with these interagency quote-unquote deployments. Please provide clarity on the process. It seems that awards are hard to obtain in the IHS. Can there be more education and training for supervisors of core officers on the importance of awards and process? Absolutely. And so I'm not sure that it is hard to obtain awards in the IHS. I think that we have a lot of civilian and tribal supervisors and supervisors, a few at urban Indian organizations as well, who may not be as familiar with the awards process, who just need some training and education, who value the work you all are doing and would be happy to write awards or happy to support an award nomination if the officer helped them with the justification. And so we definitely are already working on that sort of training and education. And on the DCPS website, coinciding with the new awards policy, there is awards guidance, including some tips on writing a good justification. And we've updated a webinar presentation to reflect the new awards policy with a goal really of helping to explain it and sort of demystify it for those who are not familiar with it. It can be daunting when you're not used to it. Thankfully, it's now only a one-page justification, a little bit easier. And so we've started trainings for supervisors and managers, including one we did not too long ago in the Navajo area, and we're planning others. And so those resources are available on our DCPS website, and we're happy to do webinars and training sessions for supervisors at a particular service unit, at an for an area, certainly by request, just let us know. In terms of agency, the sort of interagency deployments, we were 100% looking at the best way to recognize the vast majority of our officers. So officers who are, all corps officers are going to be recognized by some level of award, CCHQ award, a unit award, and then we'll be looking at other types of recognition as well, perhaps the outstanding unit citation or unit commendation as appropriate. And so we're looking into that, but that is definitely on the radar, and we do want to, for not just for COVID-19 activities, but in general, improve and increase the recognition for corps officers and make sure that the recognition is at the appropriate award level. So appreciate the question. This is a great question as well, very timely. What can be done for officers who plan to retire at the end of their HPSP retention bonus but now are unable to retire? Because, of course, there's been that suspension of voluntary retirement. This officer says, my retention bonus expired in June 2020 because I'm unable to retire, but not eligible for multi-year retention bonus. I've taken a considerable pay cut, which now will extend through March 31st because this officer will retire on April 1. Is there some way that we can extend the current retention bonus agreement for an additional period so that officers who are in my situation do not also have to take a pay cut? It's a great question. And we have raised that question recently to CCHQ leadership, and we are awaiting response. I can say that no one on the IHS side or CCHQ leadership side wants any officer to go without special pay, especially it's obviously through no fault of their own. And so we're looking into possible options. I hope to have an answer for that in the near future, hopefully by the next either for CCHQ to answer it at their next town hall or for us to answer it at our next monthly IHS all-hands call. Next, with so many officers preparing for their impending retirement, it would seem information would be available concerning the Reserve Corps that was approved to be formed some time ago. So essentially, the question is asking, when can we expect to hear more about the Reserve Corps and how current officers can, if they're retiring, how they can join the Reserve Corps. And so we really do anticipate such information to be available in the coming weeks and months. CCHQ right now is just really busy. Deployments, all these process changes, systems changes, and they're really busy putting in place the structure and the framework for the Reserve Corps. So the communication is going to follow those pieces. So we do just ask everyone to be patient and look for that information when CCHQ is at a point where it makes sense for them to communicate it. But we're certain that they will outline that process for current officers to move into the Ready Reserve, especially if they're planning to retire or separate. If I received a response email from sending my 2019 practice hours to the email address back when they were originally due by 6/1/2020 and prior to the change to uploading online, but it's still not showing in my EOPF, should I be concerned? No. There's a backlog. I mean, as you can imagine, there were a ton of PDF documents sent there, and they're still working through it. CCHQ, they're still working through that backlog of those documents, and then, of course, they also have the additional ones submitted online. So at this time, no, there's no cause for concerns. We are tracking these in terms of making sure that we hear from CCHQ when the backlog has been cleared, so we can reach out to officers to say, okay, backlog's been cleared. Are you good? Let us know if not. So no need for concern at this time. During the town hall, there was a mention of perception that clinical billets are lower grades than non-clinical billets for some categories. Is that true? Is there a checklist or document we can look at to see the things that go into determining billet grade? so we can ensure our responsibilities align with our billet grade. So I think what that comment was really saying is they feel like in order to get promoted or be in a higher level billet, they have to stop doing clinical work and move into an administrative or management billet. That may or may not be true, depending on the discipline, the size of the facility. So obviously, if an officer is like in a staff nurse position, a staff, really anything position, you can't really expect to be in an 06 billet performing those duties. And so you would have to look for positions that have a higher level of responsibility. And sometimes it may be that a facility is too small, may not be able to have the supervisory responsibilities to support a higher level billet. It may mean that an officer makes the choice to remain in that billet or to have mobility. There is not a checklist to review to see how we determine a billet, but officers should review their PD to ensure it's current and that it accurately reflects his or her responsibilities and the scope of those responsibilities, because that classified PD is what we use to determine the billet. And oftentimes we're seeing that the PD is outdated, the officer is doing much more than what's in the PD. In that case, it's really the PD has to be updated, and then we can talk about billets. But otherwise, we don't really get into billet updates per se. The responsibilities have to increase. The PD has to increase accordingly, and then that can trigger a review for another billet assignment. Mentioned during the CCHQ town hall that they were planning on incentives or incentivizing positions in IHS in the future. Officers wondering what was meant by that. So the IHS is in discussion with CCHQ, has been for a couple years at least, to develop policy on an incentive pay that is tied to filling a hard-to-fill position or assignment. And so based on the previous, what was called Assignment Incentive Pay, AIP, we proposed a couple of years ago of having a more robust, structured policy that could incentivize officers to fill hard-to-fill positions in the IHS. And so we'll definitely want to share those details about that process and what that might look like when the process is a little bit further along and we're at a point where it would make sense to do that. But very exciting and something that we would look to have for officers incoming as well as the officers who've been there supporting the mission for some time. I think this is my last sort of slide. I am very happy to end on sort of a high note in saying that all USPHS officers will automatically be enrolled in TSA's pre-check. So it's, of course, that program that all of our DOD compadres are already enrolled in automatically and allows you to go through the airport security without taking your shoes off and all that good stuff, and the line's normally shorter. Will automatically, PHS officers will automatically be enrolled in TSA PreCheck as long as we meet all the eligibility requirements, including having a current unexpired Tier 3 background investigation with the child care addendum. Great thing is all officers assigned to the IHS have a minimum Tier 3 investigation with child care. What we are doing, though, some have expired. We are working with the Division of Personnel, Security, and Ethics, DPSI, to ensure investigations are current. There is no action needed from officers at this time. And so that is a fantastic perk that CCHQ brokered with, I don't know if it's DFAS, DMDC, but a great accomplishment and will be a fantastic perk for all of us. So I wanted to just point you to the DCPS website that has contact information for us, training webinars, announcements, resources, and things like that. Please familiarize yourself with it. Might be some helpful things there, FAQs and things like that. It always has our contact information. And then here's also how you can contact us as well. That's the link to our list of contacts by region, and then you can always reach us at IHS Core Inquiries at ihs.gov and reach us directly as well. And so I did mention there was a lot of information, and I tried to get through it quickly to have time for questions. I am not able to see the chat box to see if there are any questions that came in that we can answer, as well as not quite sure if we are able to go over time a little bit to address questions. But I do hope the information was helpful to you all. I hope that you'll find this format helpful. In the future, as I mentioned, we'll work out the scheduling piece, fine-tune it to make sure that we build in additional time to make it like an hour and a half to make sure there's time for questions and or tailor the content to make sure we have time for it. And so one of the things we definitely want to hit on is the failure to promote policy and that explanation there. So I will check in with our IT support just to see, do we have time to take a few questions or if we have a hard stop at 5 o'clock. All right, I'm not hearing anything, so that might be my answer there. They may have already jumped ship with us, but Ms. Montello, are there any questions in the chat box?
There are no questions, ma'am. The chat box was hidden.
Okay, thank you. Officer, thank you so much for attending. If you do have questions that were not addressed or questions that were raised as a result of this, please do reach out, shoot us an email at IHS Core Inquiries and use the webinar subject line to precede your topic or your question, just so we can appropriately triage it and make sure that we get you an answer. But I definitely look forward to us doing this, and as we fine-tune it and tweak the timing, have more dialogue. There are some great things going on, some things we can talk about, some things that are too premature to really talk about, but we do want to always be transparent with you and telling you when we cannot talk about things or giving you the straight scoop. And so hopefully you'll find this forum helpful in answering questions and having that increased dialogue. And so just really appreciate everyone's engagement. If there's any take home from this is the Division of Commission Personnel Support is really your primary point of contact if you have any Commission Corps related questions or concerns. Please do contact us. That's why we are here. You're not bothering us. It's our job to assist you, and we appreciate the opportunity to do that. So just know that we don't want to see officers struggle or not get the answers that they need because they feel they don't know where to go. That's what we do. And we're able to answer most questions. If we cannot, we'll reach out to CCHQ on your behalf to get the answers that you need. So with that, I just want to say thank you again so much. Really appreciate your time. Let us know if there are any questions, additional questions or concerns, and we look forward to it. We'll put the slides out so that officers who are unable to attend will have them as well as for reference. And with that, I thank you again, and you all are